The millionaire's mansion was quiet that morning, but the air was thick with tension. In the grand dining room, the baby born into wealth and luxury refused to eat anything, no matter what the chefs prepared. Every fancy dish was met with a stubborn shake of the head, and the staff was at a loss. The worried parents whispered anxiously, their frustration growing with every passing minute. Everyone wondered if the baby would ever eat again. Amid the chaos, a poor maid quietly watched from the corner, her heart aching for the little child. She had no fancy ingredients or exotic recipes, just simple, humble food she knew could bring comfort. Nobody expected her to intervene, and even if she did, the parents would surely dismiss her efforts. But something in the baby's mix of hunger and sadness spoke directly to her as she stepped forward. Carrying a small, unexpected dish, the entire household held its breath. Would this simple maid succeed where the finest chefs had failed? Or would the baby's refusal continue, leaving everyone desperate and helpless? What happened next would shock the millionaire family and change the household forever. The maid gently placed the small plate in front of the baby, her hands trembling slightly. She had grown up in a tiny village, far from the glitz of the millionaire's world, learning to cook with whatever was available. Her food wasn't fancy, but it carried care, patience, and love, something money couldn't buy. She knew that sometimes the simplest things could make the biggest difference, though she didn't fully understand why the baby had refused every other meal. The millionaire parents watched nervously, unsure whether to intervene or let her try. The baby's tiny hands reached for the plate, hesitated, and then pulled back. Whispers floated through the room. Was this dish really going to work? The chefs exchanged uneasy glances, their pride wounded by the idea that a poor maid might succeed where they had failed. In the quiet kitchen, the maid remembered her own childhood, the way her mother had coaxed her little brother to eat with patience and a smile. She hoped some of that magic might reach this child. The tension in the mansion grew as the baby's eyes locked on the plate, a flicker of curiosity breaking through the stubborn refusal. Everyone waited, holding their breath, wondering what would happen next and if this simple act could truly change everything. The baby's tiny fingers hovered over the plate, hesitant yet intrigued. The parents exchanged anxious glances. This wasn't just about food anymore. It felt like a test of patience, pride, and maybe even fate. The millionaire father's mind raced. He had spent a fortune hiring the best chefs, bought every expensive ingredient imaginable, yet nothing had worked. Now, a poor maid, unnoticed and underestimated, held the attention of his child. Pride and worry battled within him, leaving him unsure whether to step in or watch. Meanwhile, the mother's heart ached at the sight of her child's struggle. She had been so focused on perfection and appearances that she rarely noticed the little moments that mattered most. Seeing the maid's gentle approach stirred something she hadn't felt in years, a quiet humility and hope. In the kitchen, the other staff whispered among themselves, some skeptical, some secretly rooting for the maid. They had witnessed the baby's stubborn refusals day after day, but there was something different this time, a calm sincerity that seemed to radiate from the simple dish. Outside the dining room, a faint tension hovered like a storm about to break. Would the baby finally eat? Or was this just another false hope in a household ruled by wealth, pride, and unspoken expectations? Every eye followed the tiny movements, hearts pounding in unison, waiting for a miracle or disappointment. The room fell completely silent, the kind of silence that made every heart beat loud. The baby stared at the plate, eyes wide with curiosity, fingers inching closer, then retreating. The parents leaned forward, each holding their breath as if a single twitch could change the outcome. The chefs, who had once laughed at the idea that a maid could succeed, now watched in uneasy fascination, pride, frustration, and disbelief mixed in their expressions. The maid knelt beside the high chair, speaking softly in a voice barely above a whisper. She didn't scold, didn't force, she just offered warmth, patience, and a sense of comfort the baby seemed to recognize instinctively. The simplest scent of her cooking, something she had made countless times in her humble kitchen, filled the room. Faint but undeniable, tugging at memories no one could see. Every second stretched painfully long. The millionaire father's mind raced with what-ifs. What if the baby never ate? What if all their wealth couldn't solve this simple, human problem? The mother's hands clenched in silent worry, her eyes brimming with both hope and fear. The baby's tiny hand trembled as it reached for the plate again. The maid held her breath, the entire household frozen in anticipation. Would this humble dish finally break through the stubborn refusal? Or was the baby about to disappoint everyone once more? The tension was unbearable, hanging in the air like a storm ready to crash. Just as the baby's fingers finally touched the plate, a sudden cry echoed from the mansion's main hallway. The door burst open, and one of the household staff rushed in, panic written all over their face. "Sir! Madam! There's been a problem in the nursery." The words hit like a lightning bolt, freezing everyone in their tracks. The fragile moment with the baby now hung in the balance. Teetering on the edge of chaos, the millionaire father's face paled. He had thought the worst was over, that perhaps the stubborn refusal had been the only hurdle. But now, another crisis loomed, one that could undo all hope of peace in the household. The mother's hand flew to her mouth, fear and anxiety crashing over her in waves. Even the chefs, who had prided themselves on control and precision, looked helpless and unsure. The maid remained kneeling beside the high chair, heart racing. Torn between staying with the baby she was slowly winning over and responding to this new emergency. Her simple dish, meant to heal a small child's appetite, now felt almost insignificant in the face of an unknown threat. Every eye darted between the baby and the hallway, tension spiraling higher. The mansion, filled with wealth and luxury, suddenly felt fragile and vulnerable. Could the baby survive this? Or was the household about to unravel entirely? The suspense was unbearable, leaving everyone, parents, staff, and audience alike, on the edge of their seats, desperate to know what would happen next. The maid's heart pounded as she finally tore her eyes from the hallway and looked back at the baby. Slowly, hesitantly, the little hands reached fully toward the plate. A soft, curious giggle escaped the baby's lips as the first bite was tasted. Relief washed over the room like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The parents exhaled, tears forming in their eyes, realizing that the simplest act, a humble dish made with care, had finally broken through the stubborn refusal that had plagued their home. But just as the tension eased, a commotion from the hallway pulled everyone's attention back. The staff returned, carrying a small, trembling bundle, the nursery's new twin deliveries, a surprise no one had expected. The mother gasped, realizing the chaos in the nursery had been caused, not by danger, but by the sudden arrival of another life. The millionaire father, still catching his breath from the earlier stress, now faced an entirely new challenge, balancing the household, his worried wife, and the curious, tiny baby who had just begun to trust a simple meal. The maid, holding the now smiling child, felt a quiet pride. Her simple act of kindness had bridged wealth and humanity, proving that love and patience could overcome even the grandest obstacles. But as she looked at the unexpected twins, she wondered what other surprises would this mansion, its secrets, and its privileged lives hold. The story, it seemed, was far from over. The mansion slowly returned to a calm, warm atmosphere. The baby, finally content and giggling, clutched the maid's hand while enjoying the simple meal that had once seemed impossible to eat. The millionaire parents, humbled by the experience, realized that wealth and luxury could never replace patience, love, and genuine care. They thanked the maid, acknowledging that her kindness and intuition had solved what no amount of money or prestige could dot in the nursery. The surprised twins settled quietly into their mother's arms, healthy and curious, adding a new layer of joy to the household. The chefs, once full of pride, approached the maid with newfound respect, realizing that even the simplest gestures could make the greatest impact. The household staff, inspired by the maid's courage and compassion, began to see the mansion not just as a place of wealth, but as a home where every act of care mattered. As the day ended, the millionaire parents reflected on their journey, the stubborn baby, the unexpected twins, and the maid who had taught them that love and attention matter more than riches. The mansion, once filled with tension and unspoken fears, now radiated warmth and unity. And while challenges would always come, they knew that patience, humility, and a caring heart could overcome even the toughest obstacles. The story closed with a quiet reminder: true wealth is measured not by gold, but by kindness and connection.